位观众朋友们，大家好！刚才我们的 teenagers 跳得怎么样？大家，我的名字叫 Tom， 我是今天的主持人啊。你们大家想我了吗 ？Long time no see， 好久不见。Did you miss me? I need to hear that, people. So, Ah-Lan, the other day, came up to me and she said, so many people have been saying they missed Tom at last year's gala presentation. And so she said to me, she gave me an order. She said, Tom, you've got to come and be the MC for this year's show. And I said, I may be able to work with that. Will the audience reimburse my airplane ticket? Business class, of course. And so Ah-Lan gave me that look. You know that look. Okay, are you going to reimburse me? Just checking. Just joking. So as many of you know, Ah-Lan and I have been living in Shanghai for my work for almost 3 years. But because we have the internet and we have mobile phones and all of those things, Ah-Lan has been in close contact with a studio. She's been looking at all of the dances, she's been watching the progress of the dancers, and helping with many other things behind the scenes. But really, the burden of Ah-Lan's responsibility has become lighter and lighter because why? Because of the great work that teacher Yachi has been doing managing the studio. You all know Yachi, right? Yes. Now, I have been told that last year's show, The Legend of the White Snake, was outstanding. Was that right? Well, ladies and gentlemen, today, Ah-Lan Dance is presenting another wonderful performance, a dance suite called the Four Great Beauties. In Chinese, 用中文说是四大美女. Okay, this is a wonderful dance suite, directed by teacher Yachi with lots of help from teacher Yang Ni. Now, the challenge of putting this together was enormous because Ah-Lan Dance had less than 3 months to get the whole thing together. Okay? And actually, Ah-Lan even said to teacher Yachi, make life easy for yourself. Make life easy for yourself. Just keep it simple. But teacher Yachi, through her determination, her hard work, and magic, was able to put together this dance suite, the Four Great Beauties, in a very short time. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have missed you. It's been a long time since we've been together. 我的粉丝在吗？我得坐下跟我们的粉丝啊好好聊一聊啊，对吧？咱们我跟我们的粉丝，我们得好好坐下交流，要不要？好，找一个时间交流啊。Actually, I'm doing a lot of this talking because the teenagers who just did the jazz lyrical and the ballet had to change clothes. So that's what's called filler in the business. But I hope you enjoyed it. So now I'm going to get serious. We're going to get down to business here and begin our dance suite. 喜欢看中文的朋友们可以到我们的官网看看中文的节目单啊。We begin our dance suite by introducing the first beauty, Xi Shi. This is the story of Xi Shi washing silk. In the ancient kingdom of Yue, in a time known as the spring and autumn period, there lived a woman named Xi Shi. She was a dyer of cloth who came from a poor background. And she was said to be so entrancingly beautiful that when fish saw her reflection in the water, they would forget to swim and sink below the surface to drown. Now this is the story of Xi Shi. She lived in a time of political instability in China, where many small states, before China became one big country, where many small states fought. One day, while washing silk with her sisters, a nearby military advisor called Fan Li sees the beautiful Xi Shi and he recognizes an opportunity. Hoping to strike up an alliance for the Yue kingdom, he selects Xi Shi as a gift to the king of Wu, which is a neighboring state. Now, shouldering the hope of her people and the weight of duty, Xi Shi dons wooden shoes and she bids farewell to her home. Sorrowful, yet determined, Xi Shi is swept into an unknown journey of national rivalries, far away from her home. And she goes from being a simple village girl to an historical legend. Let's begin with the story of Xi Shi washing silk. Ladies and gentlemen, the next story in our dance suite, the Four Great Beauties, is called Diao Chan Prays Under the Moon. This is a story of the beauty Diao Chan. Her story is set in the Three Kingdoms period, at which time we see the young Diao Chan playing in a field. As she plays, she is so lovely that flowers turn to hide, bashful at the sight of her beauty. And as time goes on, she grows into an elegant woman whose beauty rivals even the moon itself. Now, Diao Chan's fame comes from the famous novel, The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. And according to this novel, Diao Chan was a court lady in the late years of the Eastern Han Dynasty. She was living under a tyrannical regime. Political struggles threaten her safety and the future seems bleak. But despite this, Diao Chan never gives up her pursuit of hope. Praying under the moonlight, Diao Chan becomes a symbol of hope and resilience. In the face of darkness, it is as if she transforms herself into the very moonlight she has prayed to. Luminous and steadfast, Diao Chan's resilience in the face of darkness is forever remembered in history. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me to come back and do some talking. I think we had a conversation about why we need to do this, right? But anyway, I do have some practical, important information for you. Did you all enjoy our young dancers doing the Wugong and ballet? Well, your kids have an opportunity to do a lot more of that in a fun setting, and that opportunity is called Ah-Lan Dance Summer Camp. Yes, it's here. Ah-Lan Dance Summer Camp begins on June 30th, and registration is already open. So, your child can go to Ah-Lan Dance Summer Camp and learn ballet, jazz dance, lyrical dance, hip-hop dance, modern dance, Chinese dance, Hawaiian dance. I'm running out of dances here, but they do all kinds of dances. And it's in a fun-filled setting, just like the summer camp that you always think about. So, go out there and register your child for Ah-Lan Dance Summer Camp beginning June 30th. Now, we would like to have you enjoy another ballet piece performed by our 6 to 9-year-olds and our 10 to 12-year-olds. And this is called the Waltz of the Flowers. Please welcome our dancers. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's return to our dance suite, the Four Great Beauties. I'm going to introduce you to the beauty Wang Zhaojun. This is the story of Wang Zhaojun's journey to the frontier. Wang Zhaojun was said to be so beautiful that her appearance would cause birds in flight to fall from the sky. In the Western Han Dynasty, more than 2,000 years ago, when Wang Zhaojun lived, a royal edict arrives, and Wang Zhaojun learns that she will be sent to marry beyond the frontier. Now, at that time, relations between the Han Dynasty and its northern neighbor, the Xiongnu, were strained. The rulers of the Han Dynasty in China determined that Wang Zhaojun would be sent to marry a Xiongnu leader and to live in a distant land. While she calmly accepts this order, she is of course devastated to leave her home. As her only token of her homeland, Wang Zhaojun gathers a handful of soil in a cloth, and she departs on the long journey across the land. Through her selflessness, Wang Zhaojun helped the Han and the Xiongnu avoid war, improving relations and bringing peace. In the end, Wang Zhaojun fulfills her duty, and she becomes a symbol of peace between two nations. And her name and loyalty remain etched in the records of history. Now please enjoy Wang Zhaojun's journey to the frontier. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the last, but certainly not the least, of the Four Great Beauties. This is the beauty Yang Guifei. This is the story of the favored consort. At a grand banquet in the imperial palace, the emperor drinks and celebrates with his beloved consort, Yang Guifei. She lived during the Tang Dynasty, and she was said to have been so lovely that the Tang emperor greatly favored her. However, as time passed, and Yang Guifei found herself fading from the emperor's attentions, she's left vulnerable to the schemes of palace intrigue. Ostracized and blamed for the instability in his kingdom, the emperor's hand is forced, and he orders the death of Yang Guifei. In the end, she is given a white silk ribbon, and a tragedy unfolds quietly. The story of the favored consort, Yang Guifei, is a tragic one, in which a beautiful and innocent woman is swept up in fatal political struggles and palace intrigue. And yet, the Tang Dynasty was the most prosperous and cosmopolitan era of ancient China. And so despite her sorrowful ending, the spirit of Yang Guifei endures far past the golden age of the Tang Dynasty. Her spirit persists as an iconic symbol of that era's magnificence, forever written down in history. Ladies and gentlemen, the stories of China's Four Beauties have been passed down to us for thousands of years. From ancient oral traditions, to literature, to modern movies and even video games. These stories are iconic cornerstones of Chinese culture and history. The sacrifice of Xi Shi, the resilience of Diao Chan, the loyalty of Wang Zhaojun, and the love and sorrow of Yang Guifei. Though all these women were bound by fate and their endings bittersweet, their stories have shaped the brilliance of history, and they continue to influence Chinese culture today. There are so many people to whom we are grateful. So, let's get into it. First, we'd like to give a big thank you to our wonderful ballet teachers, Esther Cardona and Molly Levy. Your dedication and guidance means so much to our dancers. We'd also like to recognize teacher Aliyah Karimujian, who led our men's class. Thank you for bringing your passion and creativity to the class. Your energy truly elevated the group. A heartfelt thank you as well to our teacher, Ali Chan. Ali, of course, is a former student at Ah-Lan Dance, and she's now a teacher. And thank you for sharing your passion and deep knowledge of Ah-Lan Dance with our younger dancers. Thank you next to Nora Tan. Nice to see you again. Thank you also to Nora Tan, who is a true artist and a former dancer from Ah-Lan Dance. Nora designed the posters and the program for our show, plus she was an assistant teacher of 4 to 9-year-old classes. We'd also like to give a special shout out to our Chinese dance teacher, Yang Ni. And your incredible contributions to our drama rehearsals and choreography. Yang Li. Now let's see if we can shake the earth as we give a huge round of applause to our artistic director, teacher Wu Yaqi. Inspired our community and nurtured our young dancers. And last but not least, let's give a big round of applause to the producer of today's show, the founder of Ah-Lan Dance Studio, Ah-Lan. Over many years have made this stage and this community possible. And this year we have 3 dancers who are going to graduate and go on to college. They are Felicity Wong, Felicity, would you like to say a few words to our audience? The right answer is yes.
I've been dancing at Ah-Lan Dance for over 12 years now, and one of my favorite memories is during summer camp, playing with the younger girls, and as a counselor, it's just so much fun. And yeah, thank you to Ah-Lan, Yachi, Yang, all my dance teachers for teaching me so many different styles of dances and for giving me the chance to perform with so many beautiful costumes. So thank you.
Next, let's offer our congratulations to Annie Huang. Annie was our Jiaochan performer today. Annie, why don't you share a little of yourself to the audience?
I still remember back before I was old enough to take classes here, and my mom used to take me to watch the older girls dance, and I immediately fell in love with Chinese dance. And now, 14 years of dancing here later, I'm so incredibly grateful for all of the amazing teachers, the talented dancers that I've shared the stage with, and all of the younger dancers who I've taught. And thank you so much, Ah-Lan, Datsy, and Youngmi, and everybody who helped make this show possible. And I'm going to miss you.
And finally, Emma Zhang. Would you like to come? Would you like to say a few words?
I don't even know where to begin, because I've been dancing for as long as I can remember. And at first, maybe it wasn't off to the best start with me being very shy and not really being able to express myself, but yeah, 5 years old. But now, after years and years of dance, going to almost every summer camp, every session of every summer camp, I feel like they've nurtured my love for dance and really helped me express my creativity in ways I never could have thought. And so I really want to say thank you, Ah-Lan, Yati, and Youngmi, and all of my teachers for helping me to get where I am today.
Felicity, Emmy, and Emma, congratulations. We wish you all the best on your college journey. We know you'll make us proud. Ladies and gentlemen, most of our dancers started at Ah-Lan Dance at a very young age, and these young ladies are a good example of that. Each year we send these wonderful students off to college, where most of them keep dancing, and I hope you do. So ladies and gentlemen, before we close, we have a few more people who we'd like to recognize and thank. First of all, we'd like to thank our stage manager, who is also a former Ah-Lan Dance dancer, Grace Chu. Special thanks also to the sponsors of today's show, Dr. Kathy Fong and Shelley Yiping Lee. Thank you for your generous support. Thank you so much, Kathy and Yiping. Thank you also to all the room moms who kept things from going totally crazy in the backstage. And I also heard that there was a room dad for the men's class to keep them from doing crazy stuff in the backstage too. All right. Thank you to Jessica of the El Cerrito High School tech crew up in space back there. Thank you to our former student, Nora called all of the cues. But most of all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, our audience, for all of your great contributions and all of your support. Ah-Lan Dance truly is a big, warm family, and most of all, we are so fortunate to have your support, our audience, for all these years. We are Ah-Lan Dance. Thank you.